Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we're getting jacked, grabbing a Coors Light, and heading down to the Roadhouse. That's right, Roadhouse 2024. We'll start with an icebreaker question before jumping into a spoiler-free review on the film, where we'll provide a verdict, and then we'll conclude the show by going into an in-depth spoiler discussion, or as in-depth as you can with a film like Roadhouse. I'm joined by my co-host, an award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker, Pride programmer at the Dead Center Film Festival. Hey, Laron Chapman, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'm more of a lover than a fighter, but we can fight about this movie, that's for sure.
I worked really hard on this table, Laron. We're not going to break any tables today, I hope. Can you give me your best McGregor impression?
Oh man, God, it's like a Lucky Charms on Leprechaun on steroids. Gosh, he was at the South by West premiere.
Is he in character, or is
he? That is him. That is exactly who he is.
I see. Okay, my theory is correct then. I am also super excited to be rejoined by a pair of great guests, both of them returning joins, but first time together. First up, we have from KOKH-TV, Fox 25, and a variety of radio stations. Also a member of the Critics' Choice Association, Craig Sanger. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Can you give me your best McGregor impression?
I could do it smiling, because the guy couldn't stop smiling. I was waiting for him to deliver a line without a grin. He just couldn't do it.
He had that perpetual "I'm just happy to be here" energy the whole time. Well, very happy to have you back on the show. I think the last one we did was The Northman a while back. Yes. Last and certainly not least, he's from KJYO-FM, iHeartRadio, and he's also another member of the Critics' Choice Association, Jason Black. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you.
You know, I went out of my way to try to not do a goofy, dumb blockbuster for you this time. And
why?
But then you specifically requested Roadhouse.
Before you even asked.
Well, it was funny. I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, I'm asking Craig and Jason for this one. I asked Craig about it, and then I'm like, I'm going to ask Jason, and then you come back and say, Caleb, put me on that show, not realizing I'd asked Craig to do.
And then I pitched Jason to you, not knowing that you had already asked Jason.
It was a magical experience because we were all on the same wavelength.
I'm just happy to be here, guys.
And then I specifically said, which one's Laron on?
Well, Laron is now on all of them these days, or at least until he's making a movie.
This is true.
So, Laron, go make movies. All the time.
Yes, please.
Well, listeners, before we get into today's review discussion, I wanted to note that if you're listening today and you enjoy the conversation, please make sure to subscribe or follow on your preferred podcast app and leave us a rating and a review on your preferred app. Hey, on Apple, we have a goal of 200 ratings. We really need your help to get there this year. That's the goal. We're setting goals this year. Haven't really pushed it super hard, but there might be something in it for you. You can find out for that by heading over to our social media channels on Instagram and Facebook, facebook.com/The Cinematrop, or all the other channels at The Cinematrop. Gentlemen, we are getting into perhaps one of the most 80s action movies of all time. So I thought, to break the ice before we even get to the review portion, I thought maybe we could dream up our own 80s reimaginings. Now, here's the thing that's ironic is there's so many 80s reimaginings that have actually been catastrophically bad. So we here at this table are here to right the wrongs of those movies. So as our icebreaker question, what 80s action or adventure movie should be resurrected or reimagined for the big screen? And we're not letting you off the hook by just picking a movie. The way we ensure this is good, actually, is you need to name a movie, a director, and then a star for the proposed revival. So an example would be Commando, directed by Chad Stahelski, starring John Cena. Now, Jason, I hear that you do this in your spare time, so it's nothing. It makes this so much easier. So, what you got? What are a couple of?
Craig and I just do this. So this is we call each other, and I go, "All right, look." And I pitched Judd Apatow.
One of the best moments.
I pitched Judd Apatow a remake of Father of the Bride. I said, "Look, you need to do Father of the Bride, and just make sure, just do the This Is 40 cast. Have Rudd, have Leslie Mann." I think we had Billy Eichner as Frank.
That's exactly right.
Or was it Ali G? I can't. Either one, whatever. I can't remember. But we make lists like this all the time. So
the best part about that, you pitched it to him, and as quick as you could tell him, he was smiling the whole time, and he said, "That is a terrible idea."
Yeah, he was not.
Why would I do that?
Not into it. So don't pitch that to him. Okay, so I've got several here. I'll just hit you with a couple of them because I know you don't want a bunch. But one of my favorites, I think they redo Big, starring Bill Hader. That was
Right.
one of ours. Craig.
Okay.
Oklahoma's Own.
Why'd
yeah.
you make a face? That was your idea. I think.
I know he's too old now. I think Hader 5 years ago, maybe.
Well, that's maybe
But
when we
post
came up with
Barry,
it.
I don't know.
Another one I liked was 3 Men and a Baby, and we just have Hemsworth, Evans, and Chris Pratt.
Okay.
Just have the Marvel guys do 3 Men and a Baby.
I mean, it would sell.
would
I
sell.
think.
And then, of course, the easy one, and a lot of people put this out, the Back to the Future with Tom Holland. But we had Jim Carrey as Doc Brown.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think we have Sydney Sweeney as...
Oh, did you? That's a new cast.
well, I added that one.
Oh, okay. Are we going to recast her? Are we going to recast her after the first movie, though?
No. You have her as Lorraine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh,
Right.
so
okay,
she's actually in
okay.
it.
Yep.
Okay.
Jennifer's
I like
only in
that.
the beginning.
In parts 1 and 2.
And this is one of my favorite ones, too, Craig. We had this. Instead of My Cousin Vinny, we had My Cousin Billy. And it's Danny McBride
Oh, okay.
as in the Vinny role. And then we had Edie Patterson as his love interest. Judging by Caleb and Laron's reaction,
Not a
they
box
don't-
office draw.
They don't know My Cousin Vinny as well. And then we had De Niro as the judge, and then Pesci as the other attorney.
Oh, that's good.
That could be fun.
That's good.
This
I
is
like
good
it.
The
stuff.
surprise
I like
Marissa
it.
Tomei.
Laron, this is good stuff.
Yeah. I look, I would watch all of those movies.
Thank you.
So, yeah. You don't. I won't Judd Apatow you. Like I would watch them.
I wouldn't
won't
blame
write
you if
them
you
for
did,
you,
though.
But I will watch them.
Thank you, Laron.
Laron's quietly judging you for not naming him as the director for any of those remakes.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Oh,
I'm just
done.
upset.
I don't want him to do that because that means he's off the show.
Oh,
that's very
man, that's true. Yeah, we need you here.
It's a
Laron.
loop, guys.
Yeah.
It's a loop. I'm not leaving the chair.
Well, Craig Sanger, what are some of your picks?
This was a hard challenge because in my head, I'm like, I had to keep checking. Oh, has this already happened yet?
Yeah,
because there's
exactly.
so many that have been so bad. And you don't know if it's already been done. And did I just forget about this? Like Tango and Cash was the first thing that came
Right,
to mind.
yep.
Have they done it? I don't think they have, but it should be. It's like a no-brainer. You got Dwayne The Rock Johnson,
Yeah.
somebody like Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
It would make money.
I feel like that's something The Rock would typically go for, too. That's got his name all over it in
Right.
terms of like soulless cash grab remakes,
Slam dunk. Selfishly, I would like a Mr. Mom remake, but we're in a tough, that's not action. But Keaton was so perfect in Mr. Mom.
Yes.
I don't think we have like a likable guy in that age range. Like Paul Rudd's a good one, but I
Yeah.
think he's aged out. He's 54 now.
Yeah.
Maybe
Doesn't
Paul
look it.
Rudd 10 years ago.
I think he doesn't look
He
it.
doesn't look it.
But
No.
it's true. But that doesn't mean
Though there's a lot of these actors that are older than you think, but they
Yeah.
also still look a lot older than they did 10 years ago.
that's true.
I mean, we had a moment in Roadhouse, the old one, when we saw it at the revival. It was the throwback cinema. In the original, Sam Elliott plays the mentor character,
Yes.
who's like the old guy that was
They
retiring.
keep calling him the old
the
man.
old guy, the old man. And we look it up, and he was 43 when he
Oh my
filmed that
gosh.
movie.
We're older than him.
And we're older than him at this point. The guy looked about 65.
That's incredible because there are like a handful of actors that just play old people. I think of what's her name,
Susan
Maggie
Sarandon
Smith,
is another one who just feels like she's. I mean, I always think she's an attractive woman, but I think she's always looked about, the same age until maybe just recently. So. But
I think Maggie Smith, or Monica,
Mhm.
most folks will know her easy as McGonagall from Harry Potter.
Right.
But it's like she
Yeah.
played an old lady in Hook in '93 or whatever
Yeah.
that was.
Yes, and she's just looked like that the rest of time.
Absolutely. Yes, Emily, that's a great one. Also, his hair in that movie is rad.
Oh, ridiculous.
Man, I love it. I love it. All right, Laron, you've got to top that.
man, and but what's crazy? If you do a quick Google search and you think of all the '80s movies that actually have been done, like Dune, Mad Max, Batman, Top Gun, Alien, Indiana Jones, Terminator. There's so many. Ghostbusters just this weekend.
Yeah.
So we are definitely doing it.
Did anyone see? Sorry, side note. Did anyone see Ghostbusters here?
Not
I
yet.
did not.
No, I heard it was bad. I want
know.
to see it, but I heard it was bad.
I actually liked the last one, but
No, I thought it was fun.
fun. Not great, but enjoyable. But this one I'm hearing is more cash grabby, more nostalgic debate.
I made a strategic decision not to ever, after 2016, never to review Ghostbusters formally again. Anyway, we didn't. We just opted not to review that one. But I was just curious if any of you fellas had seen it because we do have a lot of listeners who like the Ghostbusters. Anyway, Laron,
I have no strong passion for it, unfortunately.
me either.
To your point, Jason and I were talking last night. We were kind of like hesitant to name a movie that we would want to be remade because there's so many bad remakes. But then again, like Dune 2 was awesome. Like I love Dune.
Yeah.
The last two Dunes were great. So
Yeah.
I complain about it a lot, but a lot of times they're pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think horrors have. I mean, yes, there are a lot of bad horror remakes, but there's also a lot of stronger film. I still think the Friday the 13th remake from 2009 was a very solid reimagining of that franchise. Fright Night 2011, whenever that was.
I liked that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. I might like it better than the original. You know what I mean? So there's a handful, but there's a lot of those 80s action movies that are pretty rough.
And I think a lot of them that are better are typically the ones that where the original wasn't great. It was like, people liked it, but it wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like, but there's room for improvement, so.
Craig and I have a friend, and I said, something was getting remade. He loved the original. I said, oh, would you be so mad? And he goes, what do I care? The original still exists. So a remake, whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
whatever.
true. It's a fair point. Nothing's sacred anymore. And I mean that it was never sacred to begin with, but just sometimes you got to let go. Just because there's a new thing doesn't mean you don't have the old thing anymore. So Laron, did you have any other picks?
Yeah, two of my ideas. One of them was I'm a big fan of the Escape from New York and Escape from LA.
Yeah. Oh.
And I feel like that would be one that would be fun to be redone. I was thinking maybe like a Sam Raimi and maybe have like a Glenn Powell or someone like that that's going to, to replace I can't think of a Kurt Russell contemporary that feels that has that same kind of grizzled. Like, he's a hot guy, but he's also kind of like...
He's got an edge to him.
Got an edge to him. We really don't have that in
Gosling's
a lot of the
too
stars.
handsome.
Gosling's too handsome. Yep. Really, Glenn Powell's kind of too handsome, but he's kind of doing the silly action thing right now.
So I actually had this on my list as well. And it's tough because he's not necessarily an air quotes movie star, but I do think he fits the bill with Timothy Olyphant from his run on Justified. Again, he's not going to open any... I don't think he's a major movie star, but he's got the charisma, the right amount of handsome and grizzled.
Sure.
And, he likes to chew the scenery when given the material.
Yeah. And another one I had was War Games. I mean, probably familiar with. That's one I really liked as a kid, and I'm thinking that the Matthew Broderick, just think maybe like a David Fincher. Like, there's obviously some real world implications that we could do now.
I like this
because it's dealing with
the
creating a what was it, another world war online. But now we live in an internet digital age where so much more could be done that damaging in that way. And so you just place it in the real world now, give it some real world stakes, someone I thought maybe David Fincher. I'm trying to think of someone who does like political thrillers,
who would star?
It's low hanging fruit, but I'm thinking someone like maybe Timothy Chalamet, maybe with Florence. I was thinking like a Florence Pugh. I also had Sydney Sweeney because she's hot right now.
Thank you.
So just something like that would be fun, like a new take on something like that. I don't think that's as known of a movie, as some.
Yeah,
of
that's
the
a good
others.
one.
So
yeah,
I think there's a lot of opportunity for War Games for sure with the right director. So you said the Escape from New York, that was one of my picks. Another one I had was The Running Man, directed by Gareth Evans. I want to make very clear, Gareth Evans, not Edwards. So he's the one who did the Raid Redemption.
Okay, not the Rogue One.
No, not the Rogue One. That's Gareth Edwards, the one who did Godzilla. Yeah, Rogue One. Okay, so I had John Cena, but I also used him as an example. It needs to be a professional wrestler. So it could be John Cena, it could be The Rock, or it could be Batista. The reason I put it here is because The Running Man, it stars Arnold. You need to have someone who's got enough charisma, who can live in that reality TV sort of world and soak up the energy. So I think it needs to be a professional wrestler turned actor for that sort of role. But yeah, I think Gareth Evans, really strong eye for action. You give that guy there's enough commentary in his movies that I feel like there's opportunity there. I think The Running Man could be a solid one.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially about reality TV. It's more popular than ever. Yeah. Last one I had was Labyrinth, directed by Spike Jonze.
Yeah.
Where has he been?
That's what I'm asking. He did he do a documentary not too long ago or something?
That broke my brain a little bit.
Yeah. Spike Jonze.
I would love that.
And, also Low Hanging Fruit. Dune's top of mind. But, Austin Butler. Rock star.
Okay.
Put a wig on him. Bring back the Muppets. I love Muppets.
I think you'd have to cast a singer, though.
Yeah, I think so.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, Austin Butler, I know, has his toe in that, but I think, and I don't have. I mean, who's Bowie? I mean, I don't.
No one's gonna be.
Well, who would be Harry Styles.
Oh God.
I could get on board with Harry Styles. Yeah,
it's not terrible on screen.
He's not my
closest
favorite
to Bowie. Just in his terms of his style, no pun intended.
Yeah, it's fluid.
He's British, fluid.
Musically,
I let Laron teach me.
He's the best. Musically, I like him the best. His acting, I don't like as much.
Well, no one
does.
But
the musicianship,
of the musical actors, though.
Yeah. That's a good call. See, already one-upping my pick. I like this.
But Butler's got the look for sure.
Yeah.
He's got the charisma.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the singing definitely not as strong as Styles. That's for sure.
Sure.
All right, Jason, I know you're sitting on at least one more of these.
Oh, I didn't know we didn't have to cast movie stars, so I was thinking of doing Cocoon with the Golden Bachelor. But a better one that I had, this is more 70s than 80s. This is my favorite one, okay? Now, Craig and I have gone back and forth about this for years, and it's a Smokey and the Bandit remake.
Oh, okay.
And we thought McConaughey, but then we also thought Bradley Cooper in the Bandit role. We liked Anne Hathaway for Frog, but then we also talked about Jennifer Garner. Remember this, Craig?
Yes, America's Sweetheart.
Yeah. And then we liked Walton Goggins for Snowball.
Yes, always.
And then Danny McBride for Buford T. Justice.
2 for Danny McBride.
I'm on board.
And then we had Big Enos as Jason Sudeikis, and then we had the guy that plays Stevie Janowski as Little Enos.
That's
but
good.
I don't know if
Just the whole cast.
we just think we're Eastbound and Down.
Eastbound and Down, yeah.
So that's
Just hand the Eastbound and Down cast Smoking the Bandit.
Well, you have
Which is
Jody
the
Hill
namesake of the
directs.
song or the show also, right? Didn't it come from
Well,
the movie?
that's the song that what's his name sings, Snowball sings in the movie. Jerry Reed. Excuse me.
No, you're good. Listeners, what films do you want to remake? You can let us know by sending us an email at thecinemetropolis@gmail.com or hit us up on all of those social media channels. It's really an infinite game here. You could keep playing it.
I've got
for
more.
years.
I've got more. Don't worry.
Well, with that said, let's move on to our spoiler-free review of Roadhouse.
Before we start, do you have insurance?
What?
Your coverage good? Like, you have dental?
Oh, haha.
Is there a hospital nearby? Is it, like, too far?
About like 25 minutes, I'd say.
I just slapped you. Are you all right?
What?
So you like to fight? You ever win?
No one ever wins a fight.
So according to IMDb, Roadhouse is described as ex-UFC fighter Dalton takes a job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse, only to discover that this paradise is not all it seems. So a couple of quick notes about this film. It held its world premiere at the South by Southwest 2024 Film Festival, which Laron attended. We'll talk about that in a minute. Before going straight to streaming on Amazon Prime Video on March 21st, 2024. Notable because the director Doug Liman apparently was so upset about it, he protested attending South by Southwest. This remake has actually been in the works for quite a while, since 2013 at least. And at one point, Ronda Rousey was originally set to star before the project. Yeah, I know, right? I'm really glad that version didn't happen, certainly. It was resurrected in 2021 at MGM. It was about the same time as the acquisition, somewhere around that time frame. Here's something I think is notable, and I really want to get into this as we sort of peel back the layers of the original Roadhouse and how well this movie stacks up. The original film, released in 1989, starred Patrick Swayze and Sam Elliott and grossed $61 million against a $15 million budget, which is actually, that's a pretty solid turnout. That film sits at a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes compared to 61% of Rotten Tomatoes of this new release. And also, the new release has significantly more reviews. So it's, you know, it's harder to get the higher score with more reviews into the equation. So, Laron, I'm going to talk to you about your South by Southwest experience in a minute. But first, I thought it might be good just to talk about the original film a little bit to provide some context for what we are all bringing to this film. Laron, go ahead. Tell me about your experience with the original 1989 classic.
It's funny because, you know, like this is one that definitely my stepfather watched quite a bit. So I had seen it. I didn't have a strong affection for it. I didn't grow up with it, but I was at least, you know, vaguely aware of it growing up. But I did happen to rewatch it today while I was folding laundry. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's a top tier laundry movie to watch, guys. So I got that laundry done so fast. I felt like I was, you know, but
put that on the 4K re-release box cover.
So the thing is, I go back and forth on whether or not this movie was intended to be campy and bad, or if they went at it so seriously and it just evolved into that. And either way, you know what I mean? It's a ride. You know what I mean? There's a lot of cringy dialogue in terms of not just like the delivery of lines, but I mean specifically the context of it.
Yeah, some weird lines.
Some weirdly macho homophobic lines that are like not even like I'm not even super offended by those certain things, but certain things like I don't think that means what you want it to mean.
Late 80s, man.
You know what I mean?
I don't know if they knew what it meant.
Yeah, just like one I'll just share. I mean, you'll probably remember. It's like,
Here we go.
you know the one. I'm
Yeah,
sure you know the
so
one.
we looked at each other in the theater when they said it.
I used to screw guys like you in prison, and it's just kind of like I don't think I would have admitted that. So, I don't think that makes you seem like so things like that, just that didn't age well, but also is so much a product of that time. So it does feel like this time capsule. I always say, like, what are you gonna do? It was the 80s, So
was it the 80s or was it studio executives who snorted way too much cocaine and said, let's make this idea that we just farted out of our brains 10 minutes ago?
It's pretty wild, I mean, it's just a lot of the reviews, bronze over brains, and I think that's one of those things where it's like, is it like Showgirls, where it was like, I mean, it was considered bad, and then over time, people now hold it in a higher regard, or I don't know, and I'll be curious to know as we talk more about the remake, if that one succeeds in the same way as this one now does, but I have a good time with it. I think it's ridiculous, but again, I'm on the fence on whether that's intentional or by accident. So,
Laron, thank you so much for sharing your experience folding the laundry. I think that's a great review. So, gentlemen, here's a confession. We're not trying to date you, but also we are but humble millennials who might not have been around when the original film came out. What was your experience with the film?
5 stars?
5 stars?
I mean, what else do you need to know?
Okay, Jason, what? Tell me, when did you see the movie the first time?
Well, actually, I mean, it's a pretty hard R. I mean, so even though we
lots of TNA.
Yeah,
say that.
Did not see it in the theater.
Yeah. Even though we are quite a bit older than you two, it's not something that I saw until later on. I don't even know how old I was when I originally saw it. But then we revisited it. Craig and I went to Flicks for fan night. I don't know what it was.
Retro cinema night.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I love this movie. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but the 80s, I don't know how much they cared about that. They were just trying to make stuff and they thought it was cool and they thought it was funny, and maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. But this is a 5-star movie to me. It's so bad. It's so great. It's got everything you'd want and everything that you'd not want. I don't know. It's just a great movie.
I mean, Patrick Swayze does go a long way in helping kind of soften the layering flaws of the 80s
because
nonsense.
He's acting, guys. He's genuinely acting in this. This isn't.
He's acting. He's not wearing underwear. He's doing Tai Chi.
Listen,
he's ripping throats.
He's cleaning up the house, man. Roadhouse. Much simpler premise than the new one.
He's a famous bouncer. I mean,
that people have heard of across state lines.
Yeah.
Oh, when he walks into a room, they go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! We heard about you."
But the emphasis on kindness, though, that's what was so amusing.
Yeah, be nice.
Be nice.
Be nice.
Until you can't be nice anymore.
Pain don't hurt. It's great. But it makes no sense.
No.
I mean, it's just the premise of it is completely ridiculous that there would be a famous bouncer. And then that also Sam Elliott is also a famous bouncer. that there would even be.
Wait, so was this my thought as a person who wasn't around in the late 80s, I'm like, so was there like a whole bouncer subculture,
Do any of you name one bouncer? Name a famous bouncer.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Man.
No bouncers here. Craig, what was your experience with the original film?
Like Jason, I did not see this originally when it came out in theaters. It was something probably post-high school on VHS, picked it up from the video store. It did later send me down a huge rabbit hole related to Swayze. Yes. I'll get to that in a second. But I did some box office research on this. It opened 1989, the week before Memorial Day. Memorial Day big release was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So this opened the week before that. See No Evil, Hear No Evil was the top film of the box office holdover from the week before. Roadhouse opens, Field of Dreams, Canine, Pet Sematary, and How I Got Into College, Savage Steve Holland's movie.
What?
Finished 11th at the box office. That was the only thing Roadhouse went up against that weekend.
Wow. Man, they just don't make them like they used to.
I was going to say cinema is truly dead because those movies sound fantastic compared to
in
now.
1 year.
Yeah.
Think about that even in a couple of weeks of each other, but they just don't make them like they used to.
Major League also in the top 10 that week.
Oh,
we don't get as much variety either. We just get, we get basically 1 or 2 major releases a weekend now, and a lot of them are slop.
Yeah.
Well, that's the deal. We get movies. We get something every week. Just rarely can you compare them to the list that Craig just gave. I mean, we just don't get that many good movies in a year anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually made money. Roger Ebert had a famous review that was like, this is a movie teetering on a good bad movie or just a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of set that bar of like, oh, maybe sometimes bad movies can be good. And
They can definitely be enjoyable.
Yeah,
I can
pleasure.
say that.
Did he give it like 3.5 stars? It was
I think it was a good review.
Yeah, it was a good review. Leonard Maltin gave it 1.5, which is a bad review.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
But so this, I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma. We had this great video store. I probably rented this, watched it with buddies, got such a kick out of it. We went back. We found this movie that had the cover. It said McQueen and Swayze. We're like, oh, what is this? McQueen and Swayze. We look at it. It's Chad McQueen and Donald Swayze. So this is Patrick Swayze's older brother, like a little less attractive, kind of looks like Patrick, but it looks like kind of like a carbon copy of like, they hadn't refined the formula yet. So I went down this rabbit hole of trying to find every movie because they were bad movies. There was a movie called Death Ring where it was sort of like the most wanted, like, or what's the most dangerous game where they're hunting humans. Then there's he did a whole string of movies with Chad McQueen. There's
hilarious.
Another one where they find a briefcase of $1 million and they go buy Ferraris and they get chased by the mob. But it was one of the best times of my life just watching these terrible movies, and it all spawned from Roadhouse being just one of those like, well, is this good? Is this bad? I'm having a fun time. Let's watch more bad movies.
I love it that you outlined that the strategy there. It was basically you never go to at this point Redbox is antiquated, but when you go to Redbox and you have the knockoff movies,
right?
They're like obviously trying to mimic a famous movie. I like the idea of in the VHS world, it's you have a cover and you have just the last names.
Exactly right. That happen all the time. Yeah.
That we don't see that doesn't happen anymore. We don't see that anymore.
Yeah, you can't walk down.
We don't really have a lot of movie stars anymore. We have actors, but you know what I mean? Like people who are draw. Like sometimes there was a time, even in the 90s, where it's like, I'm going to see the new
Will Smith
movie or the new Julia Roberts movie. Like it didn't matter what genre it was.
Right.
It had that star in it, and they were
definitely
selling.
It was an event.
It was an event just to have a movie with them. And so now people care more about what is it about? I don't want to waste my time.
Like, imagine a movie where it's Barbie, but it's just called Dolls, and it has Gosling and Robbie on as the last names on the box.
Right,
That's kind of what that's like.
Yeah.
But it was just different because all you had at the time was the cover art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't have. I mean, the internet really wasn't quite as big a thing, at least, if at all.
Marketing wasn't as in your face now.
Yeah. When it comes to Roadhouse, confession, I didn't watch this movie until a few years ago, and I did not like it. Now, I have another confession to make that I have a friend who regularly guest hosts on this podcast named Dalton Stewart, who is named after the character from this movie. Yeah. And
he must be a great guy.
Yeah, he's okay.
Until you piss him off.
Can he stitch his own arm up or if he gets a cut?
Yeah. Before I saw the movie, I was like, you were named after a character from a movie I've never heard of, but it's Patrick Swayze, so it's got to be pretty good, right?
Yeah. I want to meet Dalton's parents. They're like real people.
Well, they've made the name a little cooler this time. It was James Dalton in the old one. This time it's Elwood.
It's Elwood.
Blues Brother reference?
Yeah, I don't know. I wondered that too. But why?
Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's this movie in a nutshell, but why?
Yeah.
Roadhouse 2024. What did we think of the movie? And I'll start with you, Craig Sanger.
I thought it was all right at times. It kind of had a good start. It had some nice, funny setups and payoffs. And then it kind of took a turn where at one point, Jason and I, when we were watching the old one, we were like, well, this is it's like a decent Hollywood movie. And then it takes a weird turn. We were like, oh, no, are these guys getting murdered for real? Like, there's dead people? This is kind of strange now. And I think this one took a similar turn where it was like, oh, this got a little too weird and gritty, where it was a little more fun the first hour.
Yeah, probably not to spoil the movie too much, but was it the moment where Dalton had been pushed too far? Was that it? Yeah, about that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then just, a string of like casual homicide.
All right. So it's okay. It was pretty okay at times. Jason Black.
Yeah, I liked it. It is fun, but it gets a little slow in kind of the late second act, which I thought was weird because this trailer is one of the all-time trailers to me. It had great lines in it, great pacing to it.
Good comedy.
Yeah, it's got a comedy. It's got the cast. It's got Gyllenhaal with no shirt. I mean, it's just got everything you'd want. And then you watch the movie and you go, well, this is pretty good, but it isn't great. and it's not as good as the original Caleb.
I wasn't going to argue with you about that. Here's how I sum up this movie. For every clever decision made by this movie, there's an equally or worse counter decision that's made. So, like Doug Liman, I really like him as a director.
Yeah.
He did the first Bourne movie, Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrows. I'm a big fan of that movie.
I think American Made, very underrated.
Yes,
I love
very
American
underrated
Made.
movie. So he's attached. I'm like, okay, Roadhouse doing the remake. American Made actually probably made me a little more optimistic about this film, just given the vibe and energy of that movie. I'm thinking, okay, great, inspired choice. I'm on board. Hey, what if we just, he's an MMA fighter. So what if we cast a world famous MMA fighter in the movie like Conor McGregor, who's never acted in his life for the big screen?
Yeah.
Terrible idea. Terrible
Not great,
idea.
not great.
I mean, at least screen him first.
I think that he's the best and worst part of this movie. When he's on screen, you pay more attention. I know he's bad, but he's like the Joker.
Or is it because he's just naked?
Well, hey, of course. That's, I love that. Laron?
Laron, what did you think?
Listen, so, I feel like, as I mentioned before with the original, I'm not sure if it was intentionally bad, but at the same time as what it is now, that one, it works for me for what it is. I'm like, okay, this is a hokey 80s movie. Got hot stars fighting and brawling, and it's fine. Like, it's like, if I can accept that that's what it is, it's good at what it's trying to do. I feel like this movie knows it's bad and it still isn't bad enough. You know what I mean? It's not. It's pulling its punches a little bit.
Didn't lean into it enough.
I was like, it's not hammy enough. I feel like we know now what Roadhouse is and what it is for a lot of people, and there's just so much untapped potential, I feel like, with this one, because like you mentioned, it kind of drags in certain parts. I feel like in between the big set pieces, most of which I really don't feel like happen until the ridiculous third act.
Is it ridiculous? Not ridiculous enough.
I feel like it could have been amped up a little bit more. I mean,
I love the boats.
There's a boat war.
Hey, listen, I love the boats. I love the boat so much. It's one of my favorite parts of this movie. But also, why is it a boat off in the movie called Roadhouse?
It's true. It's true.
It's
true. It's true. So it does feel like it pulls its punches a little bit too often, and I was disappointed in that because I knew I was like, oh, this is gonna be a ride, and so often it's so ordinary. In between, like they're going for like this weird earnestness that I'm like, we don't need this. The relationships are a little bit too sentimental, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to care about anybody in this. I just want to see men beating each other up and being stupid and having stupid lines. And it has some of that, but not enough of that, so.
Some melodramatic twists were kind of ridiculous, even for a movie like this.
Yeah.
I thought some of the fight scenes were fun to watch toward the first half, and then by the end, the filmmaking decisions,
it was too much CGI. Like, we have an MMA fighter in the movie, and we're CGIing a fight.
So they made some experimental choices that, in my opinion, didn't pay off at all. Specifically, I'm thinking about, not going to spoil the context, but the final fight, they're doing this weird thing where they're shooting it wide.
Yes, it's a wide angle, but it's
close
combat.
Yeah,
it didn't make any sense.
No,
I did not like the viewing experience of that.
It was almost jarring. I was almost getting a headache just because of, and then they were also the way they were cutting it. Man, it was such a weird choice. I don't know. What did you guys think of the fight scenes?
Like you said, the first couple, like with him and the other band of misfits there, were fun to see them kind of, they're more visceral. But like you said, as we get closer and closer to the third act, everything gets ridiculous in ways that aren't like visually arresting or interesting to look at. Like you said, a lot of CGI, a lot of enhancements where things don't feel like weird, like almost feels like there's just a vague layer of AI generated stuff happening here at the very end that just felt unnecessary. Like, again, when you have the stunt people, you have Doug Liman as a director, like he's made good action movies. So it's weird that this one feels so produced, so.
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Laron completely. I wanted more of a natural feel to it. I mean, even think about, you mentioned Doug Liman, think about Bourne Identity, how cool those fight scenes are in that. And this one, you've got Gyllenhaal, who clearly trains and is a wacko and whatever else, and then you've got Conor McGregor, who's a real MMA fighter. I don't need to be able to tell that, oh, well, they were on a harness and they got pulled back, or make it more realistic. They missed an opportunity with that.
I thought so as well. And again, it's so weird because the first one where he's having that brawl in front of the roadhouse at the beginning.
Yep.
Oh, I was like, oh, this is super
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
playful. I can see what's going on.
Yeah.
It feels like it was all practically done. And by they just lose the bearing around halfway through the movie where it's just like, what are we even doing
Just
here?
gets further and further and further away,
Yeah.
from the action. So
We mentioned Jake Gyllenhaal. I do want to drill down into his performance here, just because Patrick Swayze is sort of part of he is the secret sauce of the original, arguably. In Jake Gyllenhaal, which I've been on the air saying I'm a big fan of his work. Love him in Nightcrawler. Love him in Ambulance. Love him in Prisoners. Just honestly, if he's one of those actors where he's in it, I'm at least curious. I'll check it out.
Wildlife.
Oh yeah. Wildlife. That's right. Yeah.
triggered.
Shot here in Oklahoma. Yeah. So actually, Jason, starting with you, what did you think of the performance?
Well, I do really like Gyllenhaal. So I thought that it was pretty good, but it's not really what I want out of Gyllenhaal, right? Like,
yeah,
I want in Prisoners when he's Detective Loki and he's winking and Nightcrawler really pours himself into it. Even Ambulance, he's just completely unhinged.
You want unhinged.
He was a little bit underwhelming, and as much as I like him and as much as I'm interested in what he's doing, I wanted more. I wanted more from him.
Yeah. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not far off. I mean, I didn't need like the sad guy with trauma, but also a handsome, tough guy like Gyllenhaal. I like Zodiac Gyllenhaal. I mean, great in Nightcrawler as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I mean, the first 40, 35 minutes of this, I was like, I'm in. Like he's charming. He's kind of funny. He's got a little edge to him. But the MMA flashbacks and the bad dreams and getting pushed too far, it just turned it a little too silly.
Yeah.
Very. Laron, what was your take on Mr. Gyllenhaal's performance here?
As much as I shit on Ambulance, that is the performance that, again, we're looking for that for this, and it would have been appropriate here. And I feel like that's what's missing. Is there's his performance is kind of gives you a whole, a whole mock-up of everything that's wrong here. Is that the direction's off. You know what I mean? He's playing it wrong. It's like they don't know what movie they're in. I do think that Conor McGregor knows what movies he's in. As bad as he is, he at least feels like a reincarnation of something from one of those 80s movies.
It rivals Heath Ledger's Joker. I would put it at that.
I don't know about that. But
I just more got that he knew he was in a movie. That's all I knew.
Well,
the thing about, so if you juxtapose it against Swayze. Okay, so in the original Swayze, remember, he was pushed too far too. Remember, he has a past, and it's that he was, I guess, having an affair with some woman and didn't know she was married. And then the guy comes in and then he kills the guy.
Yep.
And he's running from that. Remember, that's the whole deal, is he keeps running from that. But also he does Tai Chi in the morning with no underwear. He wears a karate gi and tucks it into his jeans. And he also wants everyone to be nice. But they established that in the original. I know Caleb doesn't like it. But they at least established that that's who this Dalton is. So there is some understatedness to it. That's why he's calm, because this is what he does. But they don't lean into that with Gyllenhaal. They still deliver it, but they don't give any of those character traits.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a stretch in the morning on the boat, I think. But there's never anything about how he's... Oh, that's another thing, too. Swayze has... from NYU, a degree in philosophy.
Philosophy, yes.
Which is in his medical records, by the way. Don't know why.
That's right.
That he brings with him. They don't do any of that with this Gyllenhaal, other than the MMA fight where he accidentally, kills his friend or whatever. But so that's why it doesn't completely add up, because they don't actually establish that that's why his character would act that way. That's why he doesn't want to get too close to the girl on the sandbar.
Yeah,
that's the doctor, because he doesn't want any sort of attachment to anything, but we don't see enough of that to know why that is,
or why he's a nice guy. Because they do the whole playfulness at the beginning where I don't know. It just seems like there's two different characters here that are happening. There's the sad version and there's the fun version. There's absolutely no dotted line or
between them. Yeah,
or set up for that to all connect and feel cohesive in a meaningful way.
Also, the music. I feel like the music was a prominent character in the 80s film. There's always different musicians.
Blind band leader
soundtrack. They had different.
Well, it's the same guy. Remember, it's the blind guy. He has I can't even think of his name, but he's a guy.
They had a lot of the musicians in this remake there. They were sitting right behind me, and I didn't realize that until they went on stage. So that was kind of cool, but I still felt like it wasn't as prominent in the new one, like where the music didn't feel as integral a part of the story or as part of like, calling to the time that we're in or whatever. Because that's what the other ones, there's a lot of 80s hits playing, so I felt like that was a missed opportunity too. It doesn't feel as much as organically part of the story. It's just kind of there, know. And also the keys. It's just kind of like that's not as it's not a grungy it's such a nice, pristine kind of looking space. It feels strange. Like
that bar. I mean, the bars in that movie have a very distinct characteristic, which also again it just kind of adds to the vibe. Here, it just feels like a boathouse.
A boathouse,
a bar next to a boathouse or whatever.
Yeah.
So Laron, you mentioned that you were at the world premiere. Let's talk about that a little bit for a second. And I want to underscore. I've said this before on the show, but for listeners who haven't attended a world premiere of a movie at a film festival,
whoa,
it is a very electrical. No matter what the movie is, by the way. No matter if it's good or bad, it always feels like it's the greatest movie you've ever seen.
Yeah. Easy to get swept away in festival fever.
Absolutely. And as we've said before, it's because everyone who's in that theater really wants to be in that theater and they're ready to love the movie. Yeah. So Laron, you having been in the room, that was the
energy.
Was it good? The crowd was into it?
They were getting us pumped up for it. They were already like making references and callbacks to the other one.
Q&A with the filmmakers.
Gyllenhaal was there. McGregor was there.
Wow.
God, was he there. The poor interviewer was like, I need to take the microphone from this guy because he does not understand that we have to pass it along. He's like, I have questions that the studio requires me to ask, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to stop talking. I was talking to Jake Gyllenhaal, so things like that, like that made it fun still, just even seeing that. But yeah, and the energy, like you said, in that space, like the crowd was like a thunderous the entire time. So even though the better critic in me was saying this movie's not very good, I was still having a good time.
Yeah.
Because of the energy.
It is a good time.
Yeah.
And it would be more fun in a theater with
a crowd.
Absolutely.
It's definitely not something that's fun by yourself just watching at home. But if you're there with people who understand what this is or what it's trying to be, there's that level of kind of playfulness that you can have with it. Even though I ultimately don't think it's as successful at doing what it wants to do. So
removing all the crowd and the room energy on the big screen, how did it play? Because I have a decent setup here at home, but I was pretty underwhelmed. I really, really missed the big screen option.
I feel like the big set pieces, the major, in particular, the boat sequence was a big a big moment, so, I mean, and even the final fight sequence, which didn't look great, still.
Even on the big screen?
Even on the big screen.
Wow. It's easy to forgive those things at home. It usually plays better.
It's just, maybe I'm just too critical. I have too critical of an eye as I was viewing it because I was already about halfway through, like, this isn't working for me. So I was kind of looking for things to be wrong with it, and I kept finding them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the festival energy definitely made it more digestible than like when I rewatched it at home on Prime. I'm like, yeah, everything that was wrong with this, I'm not distracted by someone having a good time now because now I can see all of the flaws.
So it's interesting and disappointing to see Amazon not putting this on the big screen because they had a couple of their films last year. I think Air was one of them where they were saying, hey, we're going to release in theaters.
It would do pretty well.
Yeah, and
fairly
it did solid.
Yeah, there was a big fight. I clipped this out of Variety. There was a big story about Joel Silver, who was the original producer on the first one, was a producer, grandfathered in on the remake, was very vocal about it having a release. It didn't. And then at one point there was a concession. Okay, so the filmmakers and Gyllenhaal were given a choice to make the film for $60 million and get a theatrical release or take $85 million and go streaming only. And they took streaming only. And then Silver never shut up about it. He eventually got fired. And then, just weeks before South by Southwest, the director, Doug Liman, puts out that statement distancing himself from the project and mad that it didn't have a theatrical release. But then I guess turned around and played nice and showed up for the...
He did actually show up.
Okay.
He did not go on stage, and they acknowledged him. He gave him a standing... they gave him a standing ovation and everything. Gyllenhaal was like, much respect to you, sir, or whatever. But
interesting.
But in terms of he didn't want to speak to the press at all. So I think that was that was his protest. Yeah, but he was not expected to be there. That was a surprise for sure.
I just think that's so bizarre. It seems like they're leaving money on the table. Do they really think that the enticement for people to subscribe to Amazon is that high for a movie like Roadhouse? I don't know. I'm just curious about For the Table, because it seems to me I was really hoping that we'd see the success of Air, and then there was another one I'm forgetting about last year where
American Fiction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that made money.
It made money. It wasn't a huge hit, but it made enough money you would think to justify the cost of putting it out, which is basically a free marketing campaign for your streamer. I don't know. It just bums me out big time, because I think I really think Netflix's model is broken, for lack of a better term, in terms of eliminating the theatrical release.
Absolutely.
I think there's a couple of things. We actually talked to some Amazon people and said, why don't you guys just put it out as MGM and then just have the streaming service be Amazon? Just brand it as MGM. It has a good brand. Of course, we didn't get a response. But I think that the deal with them going straight to streaming is that you always have that it's a huge hit, but no one would be able to know the difference. If you put it in the theater, you've got numbers. And it could come across as it's a bomb, or
optics.
Yeah, or the reviews are not good, so nobody went. Whereas if it's just sitting on your streaming service, you can say, because what's the deal with, they said that, what was the bad movie that came out not long ago with Schneider on Netflix?
Rebel Moon.
Where he said, hey, more people watched Rebel Moon than watched Barbie and Oppenheimer put together. Who knows the difference? No one knows. They can say that. It can be a bad movie. You could say, gosh, so many people watched it.
Netflix also at the time claimed that Red Notice was the most successful thing they've ever had on their platform. And I still to this day don't know a real person. Well, like when it came out, I didn't know a real person who had watched it.
Right.
Not to say they don't exist, but I think that's a good point. But is it worth $25 million?
I don't know.
I don't know. Just wild choices. Well, before we get into we give letter grade recommendations and get into the spoiler section. Anything else you all want to add for listeners about Roadhouse? Spoiler free.
Just one thing I'll say is that, like, in terms of like, look, I kind of compare this to something in the ways that it doesn't work, to like something like Footloose, for example, where like it has a very beloved fan base that also has a modern 2000s, late 2000s remake that feels like, but then you're trying to think of like the reason why. What was the need to make a reboot of this material if you're not going to update it in ways that actually speak to what's happening currently or culturally? Because like that one, you had like, it was all about like what rock and roll is the devil's music, and so kids can't listen to it. That makes sense in the time frame that it was out, but then to remake it and have that still be the thing in 2000, like we're not saying that. We have WAP as a song with Cardi B and making the stuff, so like, it's like, it doesn't translate, you know what I mean? The conflict doesn't make sense in this, in modern context. And I feel like that with Roadhouse, a lot of the things that are happening in it and ways that they've updated it, they haven't changed enough of it, to make it feel like it makes sense here. It just feels like they tried to make a carbon copy of it and it just is a more watered down version of it, so.
I feel like this movie feels a lot more like an early aughts action movie than it does a 2024 action movie. Just throwing that out there in terms of like you're talking about.
It still feels dated, right?
Yeah,
as you're watching it. Yeah.
Billy Magnuson, I just want to throw out there. Ben Brandt, love this guy.
I thought he was
character
good.
actor. Yeah,
I thought he was good.
Probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, honestly.
Yeah,
that whole scene with, again, it was on the boat and his introduction.
The shaving.
Yeah, the shaving.
thing.
Oh gosh,
that's great.
I was like, I was really tense during that scene.
I swore he was going to kill someone. Spoiler. Anyway, that was the kind of movie I wanted. Though, I was like, this is a scene where they get why we're here, and then that's the energy.
And there are little pockets of it that are like that. It's just not enough throughout.
Yeah, there are things in it that work. There are things in it that are funny. It just doesn't completely succeed the whole way through. And I know you're going to ask for a grade, but I don't think it's a waste of time. I thought it's fun. It is at home, I guess, and maybe that's the answer to your question. You got Amazon Prime. You're at home. You want to watch it. It's not the worst thing you could put on.
I mean, we already mentioned Rebel Moon. That is a far worse movie to put on. So yeah, letter grades. So what letter grade would you give it, Jason?
I'd give it a B. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I didn't love it, but I did not like it. I had a good time with it, and I liked the cast, and I thought that it was fun enough. It's not as good to me as the original, but I still had a good time.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear Jason had a good. Actually, I had a pretty okay time most of the time. Laron?
I'm probably like a middle of the road, like a C with this. It's definitely, like I said, it's not the worst thing you could put on. There's a couple of inspired moments, but overall I feel like it's pretty forgettable, and that's the main issue. Whereas like I could put Roadhouse on for the ridiculousness of it. I probably won't put this on ever again because there's no reason to. But so not terrible, but very average. Yeah.
All right. Going with the C. Craig?
I'm probably right there. C minus.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, C minus. Like, again, there's things to mine here. There's funny part. I don't regret spending, and it wasn't too long. It was like 2 hours.
It's a couple hours. Yeah.
It wasn't offensively long, so no regrets there. The boats were cool.
Boats are cool.
The boats were cool.
Conor McGregor's naked twice.
Not a perk for me, but
hey,
not a perk for me.
Okay, instead of this movie, or in addition to this movie, what would you recommend listeners check out, whether it be a film, television show, novel, music, video game, or what have you? And Laron, I'll throw it back to you.
I think a modern iteration of this would probably be something like the Expendables series. Like that feels like something that's comparable, like brawny action movies, kind of dumb, it's silly, but it's still kind of it's still technically well made, even if it's just. You know what I mean? Just kind of.
I think that second one's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a series that, like, again, it's not great, but it knows what it is. It knows it's stupid, and it's having a good time with it. I think a more polished thing that's probably a little bit more a better example, that more comparable to Roadhouse, would probably be something like Fight Club. You know what I mean? Men fighting each other for the sheer, I think, and having commentary about that whole, machoism and masculinity. And I think that that would be probably, like, again, a more artsy version of something like this. But if you're looking for like cheese-tastic, then probably the Expendables. So
okay, I would recommend the second one. Just skip the first one. I mean, I don't know if you guys have Expendables opinions, but I thought I didn't even see the fourth one, the most recent one. I don't think anyone did
either.
And but the second one was pretty good. It's when Chuck Norris shows up, and it felt the most meta and on the joke. I thought. Sure. Jason Black, how about you?
I mean, just go watch the original. But recommendation, if we want to say contemporary, Bottoms.
Oh yeah.
It's got fighting. It's funny.
Yeah,
I mean, I was
that's
just
a
thinking,
fun pick.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not exactly the same, but
yeah.
No, it's got the energy though. You're talking about that.
They reference Fight Club in that.
Yeah.
Well, but right, but also just like kind of we know it's silly, but they lean into it more, and I think that's more of what we're asking for.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of our that came up on our end of year shows last year. It was definitely an underseen film for sure. Great recommends. Craig?
You're not going to like this, but you can draw a dotted line to MacGruber.
You can.
Road Rips.
MacGruber, one of Christopher Nolan's favorite comedies.
Is that right? It's one of mine. I love it. I love MacGruber so much.
That's where the throat rip thing came from, though, right?
From
Roadhouse.
Roadhouse, yes.
For MacGruber.
I mean, I assume
right?
that's the reference. Yeah.
That is another wildly underrated movie that has it's way better than it has any right to be.
Love it.
I would love a sequel to that. Wait, was there a TV?
They did a TV series on Peacock, I think this year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I need to check that out. Because I always thought, give me more of that character. I could watch him in like 10 more movies.
Yeah. Maybe recast Ryan Phillippe, but
I think always. That's a good
always.
rule.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's fine. Okay.
You guys have said the good ones. I had already mentioned a couple, but I really think if you want to see Unhinged Jake, you got to just go Ambulance. I think that movie's a great time. It really has won me back to Michael Bay, as in I really am curious about what he's going to do next. I saw Pain and Gain, loved it. Then he went back to Transformers and I thought it's over. Ambulance. Chef's kiss. That's everything I could want from a dumb action movie.
That's one of my favorite like characters that I'm drawn to, is like a guy that's like trying to do something.
Yeah.
And like the way that Jake does that character, I think Tom Cruise is a very similar thing. In American Made, where it's like a guy that's trying to like he's got some con that he's trying to run and he's got nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. And then especially in that movie, Jake Gyllenhaal cranks up to an 11 in terms of just how he delivers that performance. Everything is excessive, which again was kind of what we were looking for here, I think.
There was a time where I was on a plane and it was like everybody on the plane was watching Ambulance.
Oh, wow.
It was a huge airplane movie.
Plane movie?
Yes.
Oh, I feel like that would stress me out. But,
no kidding.
to each his own.
Does that mean we should remake Airplane now? It's worth a
Hey.
question worth asking.
Snakes
God.
on the Plane. We should remake that one.
No,
Okay,
I
that's
don't. The only thing I'd add is I already mentioned. I thought Friday the 13th was a good remake of that franchise. Evil Dead 2013, totally different genre. But if you're just like, hey, what was a movie that actually did an 80s remake in an interesting way that felt like it paid off, or they delivered something new, or was a good homage? I thought Evil Dead 2013 was a good one. I know it's not fun though. Don't go at it for fun.
Yeah.
All right, listeners. Well, hey, we're going to get into a couple of topics here in the spoiler discussion. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the in-depth, masterful, layered script of Roadhouse, go ahead and tune out now.
Escort this gentleman to the door.
Did you see that shit?
Who is that guy?
He's good. He's real good.
The name is Dalton.
Okay, so I just thought maybe this would be a good opportunity for us to, in full spoilers, so we can talk about anything that happens in the movie. What exactly makes an 80s action movie that sticks with us? Because Roadhouse is a film. I mean, again, my friend Dalton has named after the character. Clearly, this movie captured something in the zeitgeist at the time. It's got something about this guy who's a badass, but he's too nice, and he's also stoic, but he will kill you if you look at him the wrong way or you do something wrong. It's got supermodels. It's got the excessive culture that we see a lot of in the late 80s movies. And then the ridiculous storyline. A few things that come to mind. I don't know if that's really the recipe, but I just wanted to ask the table, what did you guys think made those movies so memorable and energetic? And how did this movie either hit the nail on the head or miss the mark in that regard in terms of adapting what worked about that original?
I feel like there wasn't so much. I think there was this gleeful abandon, really pretty much until you get to the late 90s. I feel like where movies weren't so beholden to, and I'm a part of the movement of, I hate calling it the woke movement, because I think it's stupid when people use that term that way. But it just feels like we weren't beholden to being PC, being politically correct, being all of these things that for better or for worse. I mean, there are obviously some cringe-tastic, lines in this in the original movie, but when you're not beholden to those things, there's kind of a liberated sense of, of verve that can kind of exist in that space where it's very much a product of its time, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it's all there. There's nothing that's fabricated. There's nothing that has to be modified to be, so it does feel like a time capsule in that way. And I feel like the issue with the remake is that it's definitely trying to capture the same essence of that, but not contextualizing it in a way that feels modern to now,
So again, like you were saying earlier, it's trying to take sort of this attitude and apply it in a way that doesn't really.
Yeah, it's trying to take a tone and recreate a tone that that it's not quite successful at recreating.
I don't know, Jason or Craig, what do you guys think about in terms of what this movie either gets or doesn't get from the 80s movie?
I think Laron hit it on the head, that the tone, but I think the key there is that I don't think they were going for a tone in 1989.
Yeah.
They were just making a movie.
What it was. It was just making a movie.
They were making a movie. It was lightning in a bottle. There's probably hundreds of movies from the 80s that did the same thing Roadhouse did, but it just didn't work for whatever reason. Had a different actor, didn't lean into it as much as it should have, didn't have ridiculous enough lines. For whatever reason, it just didn't work. Someone mentioned Snakes on a Plane a second ago. That's one where they did try. They went, hey, what if we made it really ridiculous? And it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It's Sharknado. It's a little too.
It's too on the nose. It's better when you just make something and you put it out and you do the best you can. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I can even sort of relate it back to, I talked to somebody not long ago and I said, man, Barbie, I mean, who knew that it was going to make $1 billion? And they go, oh gosh, well, the marketing was so good. Well, Okay, maybe, but I mean, they're all marketed. Every movie gets marketed. It doesn't, just because you marketed it really well, or you had some fun ideas, or you made Barbie Dreamhouse on HGTV, that doesn't mean that it's going to make $1 billion. If that's the thing, then everyone would just do that.
It's not simple for me because the marketing was only a part of that, because the best marketing for that was all the organic stuff with the Barbenheimer
Definitely,
thing,
which again, it's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
You can't make that up. Yeah. And I think that's what happened here. Is the original one, who knows why it worked, but it does. Yeah. And this one, either they tried too hard, or they didn't try hard enough. I don't know which one it is, but it didn't have what the original had.
There's a world where like a movie like Die Hard just doesn't work, and it's another one of those Hollywood movies with a premise of like, oh, there's terrorists in a building.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. But then it hit lightning in a bottle. It spawned a series. And with this one, it was like, in terms of modernization, it really didn't do anything new. It was still like, oh, it's all about the real estate.
Yeah.
When Mean Girls came out, they didn't really modernize that either. They threw in a couple of TikTok jokes.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a rebranding, restamp that and send it out in the world. So I think they tried a little bit with spectacle, that boat scene at the end, but it just, felt kind of lame, didn't it?
Well, I talked about 3 Men and a Baby earlier, doing a remake with the Marvel guys. But guys, think about, if I asked you what's 3 Men and a Baby about, you'd go, oh, well, there's this baby and there's 3 men, and which one's the dad or whatever. No, that's not what it's about. Mm. The baby gets dropped off, and they also there's a mix up, and someone drops off a package of heroin. And so the drug dealers are trying to find the heroin while they have the baby. That's really what that movie is about. Now, if you sat down and made that today, ridiculous, but it worked in the 80s, baby.
80s was a wild time. Was that, my wife showed me, it was it 5 Heads in a Duffel Bag or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Recently. I'd never seen it. Now, the whole time watching, I'm like, this could only have been greenlit in the 80s.
Yeah.
There's no way that movie would get off the ground today,
Yeah.
Is there something to, and you guys tell me, because Laron and I often talk about, the sincerity kind of felt like it disappeared from the cinemas for a while, like Marvelification of big studio films, at least. Did the original have sincerity? Am I misreading it? It feels like there is a certain amount of sincerity, but also winking at the camera at the same time. I can't decide the balance there.
I feel like, and I just watched it today again for a fresh refresher, and again folding laundry. Still can't find my mismatched socks, but it feels like. It feels like there was, at least Swayze is definitely making an attempt to make his character a grounded human being, and even with the ridiculous things that are happening around
Kelly
him.
Lynch seems pretty grounded.
Yeah, and their relationship feels not forced.
Yeah.
It does feel like they're really trying to create some organic chemistry there, and it works for better or worse. But I think that I didn't feel that with Jake Gyllenhaal, and I don't even know the actress playing.
I honestly thought the love romance subplot was awful.
Felt like a distraction. It's really what dragged down the pacing for me, because this was an aspect of the story that literally no one cares about. And clearly the writers didn't either, but
they had that amazing sandbar shot. That was actually probably one of the coolest shots in the movie, and they used it on a romantic scene, which could have been cool had I cared. But I was like, what if they had a fight on it? I don't know, just something. It was such a great location, and they blew it on a forgettable romance,
And then the extra layer of like, well, that's my father. Like, oh.
I didn't even care about you, but
right, exactly.
In terms of remaking these sorts of things, though, I think, Jason, I'm with you. I think a lot of times things are just lightning in a bottle, and we need to stop trying to remake things.
Yeah.
But the studio is never going to stop trying to do that. At least as far as in my lifetime, perpetual remakes all the time.
Yeah.
Do we think there's a viable path forward for movies like Roadhouse? And what I mean is, there's the big studio films. There's the Evil Deads, the horror. I'm talking about the one-offs.
It seems like The Fall Guy's going to work. Just based on the star power of Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling.
That played South by, right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't go to that?
I left just as that one.
Oh, okay.
They came back the next day. Yeah. So
apparently there was over a 4-hour wait in that line.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I heard, which is nuts.
No,
I'm excited about that movie, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So you think The Fall Guy, though, could be it? I don't know, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said earlier, just watch the original if you don't like it. Really, there are certain moments like Ocean's 11. I haven't seen the original, but apparently it's terrible. And the new one is great. And I know it's like 20 years old at this point, but it's not inconceivable for someone to have a new take on something, or for someone to go, you know what I always loved was this movie and I'd like to remake it. I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, you've always had me on to talk about the Fast and the Furious series. I mean, essentially each one of Fast 5 is basically Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
Right? I
With
mean, so
cars,
they're kind of just remaking these movies just in different genres. So I don't have a problem with them remaking stuff, especially if somebody feels like, I've got a take that I've always wanted to do or I'd like to try. And if you don't like it, just don't have to watch it.
I think that's a good argument at the end of the day.
And I also feel like, but and then to my sake, I'm fine with remakes if there's a viable option to do it. If there's a reason to do it beyond it being a cash grab. Like, I don't want the pitch to be like, what if we make Roadhouse, but like in the Florida Keys? And it's just like, if that's the pitch, that's not, you know what I mean?
Or not an 80s action remake, but like, for example, what Disney's been doing with the animated. I mean, again, it's at least with there even is the idea of, we're taking the animated and putting it in live action. But in terms of like the story, it's
almost exactly the same. What's the point?
Right.
Yeah.
They market it like it's exactly the same too.
Right.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason beyond nostalgia, let's put it that way, to have to bring something. The nostalgia should work in your favor, but it shouldn't be the crutch. You know what I mean? That you're the only reason why you're pushing something through, because that's where it starts to fall back, and all you're going to do is compare the two, and you're always going to fall back to the original. So
where does Beetlejuice fall in that?
We will see. I'm very curious to see that. I think there's room for that to be different. There's room for growth for that, and
that's a sequel, not a remake.
That's true. It's also a
sequel. I mean, I guess it could be a remake, sort of.
I guess you're right. Yeah, same thing with Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, the fourth one. Yeah. That's wild. I think it's weird. I'm almost more open to the idea of sequelification than I am of remakes. But to your point, we've gotten some when they do it right, which is, hey, I have a new take on this movie.
Yeah,
and when it really works, it works.
Yeah.
Do you mean the Beverly Hills Cop remake starring Kevin Hart as Axel Foley,
No.
Billy Eichner as Surge?
No more Kevin Hart.
Bob Odenkirk as and David Cross as Taggart and Rosewood.
I might like that. I mean, hey,
well, we came up with that. Okay.
I mean, I'm saying in comparison to the one that's coming out this year.
Got it.
But this still has Eddie Murphy, and then I watch your version instead.
I just can't do Kevin Hart anymore.
He's just the only person we could think
that's all,
of.
yeah, well, it's true. I mean, there's not many.
Also, later this year, we have like an anthology type of movie with twisters, where it's not a remake, it's not a reboot, but it's in the same vein as Twister.
I'm down for twisters. It is weird. Yeah. Is it a sequel? No, but yes.
I hear there are Easter eggs, but it's not a direct.
There's no characters that carry over from the last one.
Failed Easter egg in this Roadhouse remake, where the little girl at the bookshop is like, "Hey, I found this Western about a guy who works at the Double X Saloon. Why didn't the book call it the Double Deuce Saloon?"
Well, did you notice that next to the bookstore, the store was called the Double Deuce?
Oh no, I did not notice.
Yeah, nice. Also, did you guys know this is like a Western?
It was.
It wasn't.
They love it.
Talk about trying too hard.
Yeah, I mean, just keep telling us it's a Western, and I guess I'll get on board. Yeah, I thought that this movie failed spectacularly with the Conor McGregor character. It sounds like there's some disagreement at the table, which is great because I really found him to be pretty much unwatchable.
I thought he was going to be the mentor character before I saw the trailer.
Yes,
and then that character just doesn't exist in this version.
No, I assumed he was.
You
gonna
thought
have
that was the Sam Elliott?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like have a small bit role, a couple scenes here and there, kind of provide some
He was going to
advice.
come in, help Jake, get the place in shape.
And honestly, he could have done it as Conor McGregor, and it would have made it more believable.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's an actual MMA fighter.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what do you guys think? Does he add anything to the fight scenes at all? Is it just a marketing stunt? What do you think?
Well, no, that's the problem. He doesn't add anything to the fight scenes, but Conor McGregor is, I'm not a UFC guy, but he's the one.
Right.
I mean, he's the one we all know. I've heard different things UFC people say that he's by far the biggest draw in UFC. I don't even think he wins anymore, but he's by far the biggest draw for UFC. So putting him in this movie is actually probably pretty smart because it opens up to a crowd or maybe plays into a crowd that would probably like this movie. Is his acting good? No. Does he smile the entire time? Yeah, but
he's a force of nature when he's on screen.
But like I said, every time he was on screen, I was into it. And part of me was going, "Oh gosh, he's so bad," but I was into it.
He does suck the air out of the room. Yeah. For better or for worse.
Well, yeah, and I just wish that that they had just let him loose and not had so much, like you said, digital enhancements around it, because I feel like he could have done the physicality.
I wonder if he couldn't. I wonder if that's the problem.
Maybe.
And they were worried he was going to hurt somebody.
Possibly.
Yeah, could be.
I was worried he was going to hurt somebody on stage. So it's just like, he's just that unhinged of a human being,
right,
in general. And just like, he's a loose cannon and you can't shut him up. You can't get, but also he can beat your ass. So you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to yell at you too much.
But that's one of his deals, is that in those press conferences for the fights, he's great because he doesn't stop talking. He's crazy. He says these things.
He hurls the insults.
Sound bites.
He's great. That's what he does.
So that's what they were really going for. They just wanted him on board to sort of market the movie.
I don't know if they knew what they wanted. I just think that
and he felt like, to me, he just felt like part of like that is the level of unhinged ridiculousness that I was expecting from the entire cast and the entire movie. And because nobody else is doing that, it feels awkward. And that's, what I mean? Then because Jake is kind of dialing it back and the movie itself is kind of dialing it back, he feels like this big sore thumb in every
counter.
scene.
Well, even the way they introduce his character, I mean, he shows up and he's naked, and then he, while getting clothes, burns down all the outdoor stores.
Where was his phone, by the way? No, I think it was in his sock. But I think they showed that.
Did I miss the big reveal of who Gerald Brandt was?
No, I was actually going to ask about that.
I was kind of waiting. Was there a stinger? Is that the sequel?
Right. Because it was bizarre. I'm thinking,
it was setting up to be somebody like a named actor that comes in and does.
Oh, you know what? That's funny too. When we were watching, I watched this with my wife, and she goes, they kind of did the reveal as to why they want the roadhouse to go away, so they could make this resort or whatever. And my wife goes, so in the original, what was the deal with the bad guys? And I said, they're just jerks. I don't know. There was no motivation.
They didn't want the land either.
No, they just wanted to run the town.
And he's blowing up all of his properties, which I thought didn't make. He's like, you see what I'll do if you don't leave town. But I was like, isn't that going to cost you money? Like,
but Laron, you forgot he's bringing in that J.C. Penney's.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Honest question here, just about the mechanics of what's going on. Didn't at one point Brandt say burn it down, and then they proceeded to not burn it down? But they still won technically. Am I crazy? Did that occurred?
That did. Yeah, you're right.
Wasn't it bizarre? I guess I'm just wondering, what was the plan? I thought about this a lot in the second half. I'm like, so you can't buy. I guess you can't buy it off. I guess for whatever reason.
Well, I think she won't sell.
Right.
So they're trying to.
Well, they're trying to push her out.
And make her to go, fine, I'll just sell. Let's get out of here.
Right. And when that doesn't happen, he just gets to the point where after he's in the bar, physically there, spotted by her, walks out and says, burn it down.
Yeah.
and then they don't burn it. They beat up, they make a ruckus, but they don't burn anything down. So I was like, okay. So firstly, if you were going to burn it down, you're going to be the obvious culprit, number one. Number two, your guys didn't even do what you told them to do. I guess the villain's motivations here just a little questionable.
Also, the money doesn't make sense to me because wasn't she offered him like $20,000 to like do like, I was like, what kind of money is this? Is this bar making where you can give a stranger $20,000 to come in and just fix your...
It is packed every night. I don't know why you'd want to go there, but it was packed.
Especially where there's notable thugs there.
You're going to get beat up and
Yeah. Like how much do they have to, how many glasses, how many dishes, how much furniture do they go through?
How many pool
cue sticks?
Cue sticks, yeah.
Okay, and that also leads me to another thing that we haven't fully addressed in the spoiler section. Craig, you had mentioned this, alluding to the fact that you're like, I'm in for the first like third half, and then there's the moment, or at least for me, the moment was whenever Jake Gyllenhaal, Dalton has been pushed too far, and then he just starts feeding dudes to alligators.
That's right.
And then he did that whole thing with the cops where he like shot up the dead body.
Yeah,
I was like, well, this is weird.
It's dark in a way that's not fun anymore. Like I'm not offended by it, but it just feels tonally off.
Yeah, like you didn't rip a guy's throat out and just leave him in the pond.
Yeah, there was motivation for it. Yeah, exactly.
That was such a missed opportunity. How did they not?
Well, they really did miss an opportunity by him not ripping a throat out.
That's what I'm saying. How did they not do that?
He collapsed the trachea.
Yeah,
instead.
that's no fun.
No fun.
He also at one point punched a guy in the head or something that said you're going to forget everything. That the guy proceeded to not
And then
forget
he
everything.
didn't forget. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, he lost his sense of humor. At the beginning, he was funny.
Yes.
He had quips every time somebody was trying to fight him, and then he just turned into sad Dalton.
Yeah, the fight at the beginning where he was like telling him exactly what he was going to do before he did it, and he drove him all to the hospital. I thought that was
that's
a
a
great
funny.
gag.
That's
It's
a
a
funny
good
bit.
bit.
There's a bump coming up. That's funny.
Yeah.
And it was one of the cronies that how man.
Well, that was one of my favorite lines.
He had some good ones where he's always trying to like talk his way out of it. He's like,
He's a nice guy.
He was great. Yeah, he was great. And then, what was it? Like you said, the hospital bit is very funny. Every single time he said it. The good news is the hospital is only 25
Yeah, that's
minutes
funny.
away.
Yeah, this movie I just think lost the bearings halfway through for me. If it had been the first third the whole time, I would have been on board.
Yeah,
completely. All right. Well, any other thoughts on this film? I have one more question here if we want to get into it, but I want to make sure we do. We do.
Sure.
Yeah, we do. Well, I mean, are there any other examples of athletes turned movie stars that can pull it off? Because I hate to say it, I just don't think Conor McGregor is going to make that transition. Do we? And there's wrestlers turned movie stars, but that's a little different because wrestling's
performative.
Yeah.
I think without question, Dave Bautista is the best actor from. I mean, I don't know if we want to
the
say
best acting
wrestling.
chops for sure.
Without question. We've had this conversation before about how The Rock is so much more famous,
Yeah,
and
he's
I love
the
The Rock.
moneymaker, of course.
But Batista's the better actor, and I mean by far the better actor.
And he does more interesting roles too. Like,
Definitely, he's
more versatile for sure.
But he hasn't necessarily been the lead in a lot of stuff. But the stuff he's doing, I mean, he's doing
top notch
Villeneuve movies. He's a Bond villain. You know, he doesn't talk, but
the M. Night Shyamalan movie recently where he's like playing
Knock your cabin. Yeah.
some dramatic chops. So it's definitely there. You know,
That's right. He had glasses on. That was shorthand for this guy's smart now.
yeah.
Are there any non-professional wrestlers that have made the transition successfully, though? That's my question. I mean, pro wrestlers is one thing.
Well, you know who's great, and I only Craig's going to get this, I think. But in Hustle, Anthony Edwards was great as the villain. He plays for the
for sure.
Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh,
way better than I expected.
And I mean, who knew? But he's really good in that movie. So sorry, I know you guys don't know. It's a little bit of a deep cut, but
it's good to know.
But he's excellent in Hustle. Did you guys watch Hustle?
I don't.
Oh, it's
Adam
really
Sandler?
good.
Is it recent?
Oh,
It
yeah.
was
I didn't watch it, but I know what it is.
2 years
Last
ago.
year, 2 years ago.
Okay.
Netflix.
No, I don't think I did. It's Netflix. I miss a lot of Netflix stuff, for better or for worse, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't think of very many non-pro wrestlers turned
It's not very
athletes.
common, you know. I mean, like you said, wrestlers. We've seen a lot of those, but in terms of like, just people who jumped immediately from a different trade to this and actually succeeded at it.
Surprised one of the Manning brothers didn't try it out. They got the charisma for the camera at least, but I guess they got rich off the Papa John's commercials.
80 for Brady. Tom's pretty good.
A lot of them are like retroactively doing it. People like Michael Fassbender, who like now like does NASCAR.
Oh,
racing.
yeah.
Formula One.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's like, only certain movies will I come out of.
So you know who gives a good performance? You mentioned Airplane. Kareem's good in Airplane.
Yeah.
That's probably the all-time best performance of an athlete in a movie.
Marshawn Lynch in Bottoms. No, look, it's one role, but hey, he killed it, you know. So
Are you saying that it's better than Michael Jordan in Space Jam?
As far as performance goes, yeah, probably so. But I mean, but Michael's way better than LeBron in this Space Jam remake. He's so bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, LeBron's absolutely terrible. That whole movie is something.
Yep.
you guys are sitting on Kazam, though, you know. Shaq and Kazam.
Hey, Shaq and Blue Chips, though.
Or Steel? Was it Steel?
There's Steel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Not a great track record. So anyway, I'm just saying this to say, if they're not pro wrestlers being the exception, and even that's not a great exception, athletes turn movie stars. Not too many of those.
Because we've seen Ronda Rousey in movies before, and
so
there's a
bad.
reason that she's not doing anymore.
Fast Six.
Yeah, and she's also not doing professional wrestling anymore. Apparently,
Look, Channing Tatum started as an exotic dancer. I'm just going to say that. So
well, there's again, it's the performer. You know,
that's true.
You know?
That's true.
But he wasn't an exotic dancer before, was he?
No, I think he was.
I think so. Yeah,
It was okay.
Yeah.
Ah,
Hey,
yeah, something to do.
yeah.
You know who was a pretty good actor? OJ. I'm just saying. He was pretty good.
Yeah, so was Cosby. You know, like, but
Yeah, I'm just saying athlete-wise.
yeah.
We could have had a different world where OJ is one of the biggest movie stars out there. Well, sadly,
Jim Brown was
Yeah.
pretty good actually too.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Jim Brown legit quit football to go do acting and was pretty good.
I'm gonna have to check out some Jim Brown movies now.
Well, he was a Dirty Dozen. I mean, that's
Fred Williamson.
Yeah.
Fred Williams. Oh, well,
We got to tell you about it the time we saw one of his movies.
off air.
Yeah.
But then Apollo Creed, we should give it up.
yeah.
He just
Yeah,
died,
right.
so we should give it up.
Carl Weathers. Yeah.
Carl Weathers was
That's
he played in
fantastic.
the NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about them. Yeah, he's great. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, once again, if you know any examples that we missed, shoot us an email at thecinematropolis@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. Gentlemen, any other closing thoughts on the film before we wrap up today?
Be nice
Be nice, guys.
until it's time to
Until
not
it's
be
time
nice.
to not be nice anymore.
Pain don't hurt.
Now I'm trying to figure out how nice I'm supposed to be for Doug Liman next time he shows up. All right. Well, hey, it's been a great conversation today. Craig, Jason, always a pleasure to have you on the show. I'll pass it back to you, Craig. Where can people follow you and all the work you're doing out in the world?
I'm on Letterboxd if you want to follow me on Letterboxd.
Absolutely. Just Craig Sanger?
Oh, God. I'm trying to look it up here. It is Craig Sanger.
I like it. You are the same way on Twitter. Very simple. You were smart and got ahead of all the name taking.
Yeah, there's a guy in Canada not happy with me that I got all the good Craig Sanger handles.
Well, and your dad is Sanger Craig, which always
That's right,
confuses me.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Jason?
So follow Craig's dad at Sanger Craig, and then also mine is my Instagram FlickKicks23, where I wear a shoe pairing with movies, in hopes of one day being given free movies and shoes. So far, it has not worked.
I mean, get the free movies sometimes, maybe, kind of. No free shoes.
On occasion.
You know?
No shoes yet.
All right. Even after Air. After Air? Come on.
Oh, well,
You were basically the spokesperson for them before Air was a movie.
listen, we went to a whole press conference with the cast of Air. I sat in the front row. I wore Jordans. I wore pink sunglasses. I wore this whole getup. And Craig goes, "Did any of them even look at you?" And I said, "No."
No. Laron Chapman, where can people follow you online?
They can follow my reviews at thecinematropolis.com.
That's right. Real Insights with Laron Chapman. We have, by the time this episode comes out, you did a written review of Love Lies Bleeding. And, to celebrate the Easter weekend, you, of course, have Immaculate coming up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, exactly. See, it's a great weekend for Laron Chapman. I Real Insights with Laron. You can also find me on Letterboxd and all the social medias at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. Or, of course, running everything over at thecinematropolis.com. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We're going to be watching a pretty similar movie next week, larger than life, personalities going toe-to-toe on the big screen. Of course, I'm talking about Legendary's MonsterVerse follow-up of Godzilla v. Kong with Godzilla X Kong. Or is it just Godzilla Kong? Not very clear marketing materials, not very clear. We're going to be reviewing Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. I'm sure it'll be a fun time. We'll catch you again next time.